Welcome to Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Jolina Banez, and I am your worship associate today. I am joined by Reverend, who are you again? Reverend Sian Wiltshire, our minister. Jacob Swetland, our director of music ministries, is out today at an MLK event, so we're being led by Zeno Mueller and Maureen McConaughey with our music today. Karen Magoon Pearson, our Director of Religious Education for our youth and children. Joining Reverend Sian this morning, very exciting, is leading in worship is Reverend Karen Stoyanoff, the former and retired minister of this church. Reverend Stoyanoff served this church for 13 years, and we are delighted to have her as part of this community and with us this morning. We all would like to welcome you this morning, all of us. We would also like to recognize the many volunteers that have helped put this service together today. Wow, look at all those people. We respectfully recognize that our church property rests on Hachiman and Tongva land. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many different beliefs, but we are one loving community. We are bound together not by a common set of rules or beliefs, but rather a covenant. A covenant is a promise that whatever our beliefs, we accept one another and encourage each other in spiritual growth. We affirm that all life has inherent value and that all existence is interconnected. We strive for justice and companionship in our deeds and relationships. We are committed to creating a welcoming community without regard to the traits that sometimes divide people. To our Roomers, we invite you to silence your cell phones. For our Zoomers, we invite you to say hello in the chat. Hi. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you will find it here. Later in the service, we will have an opportunity for you to introduce yourself if you'd like to do so. Real quick, I realized I forgot to do something this morning. So to center, let's bonk. We begin our worship with the lighting of our chalice. This morning, I'd like to invite Damon Anderson to light it. He's been a UU for 20 years, previously in Boston, and he just helps out around here in many ways. As he lights our chalice, let us say our unison affirmation together. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. This we affirm together. This we will light together. Boy, that's down low. Yeah, it's good. Low. Thank you, Damon.
So rise in body or spirit if you'd like to and sing this song. You got to do. Come on.
Again.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do, 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 Spirit says do. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing. Oh Lord, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. Spirit says sing, 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 Spirit says sing. You got to love the Lord. You got to love when the Spirit says love. 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 Spirit says love.
This morning we're going to be talking about leadership. Ooh, because I think we need better leadership in this world, but it's something that I think that this country, and I think the average person struggles with. What is leadership exactly? What makes a good leader? And it turns out that actually it's a question that's been asked for thousands of years. People have been struggling with this. And so our opening words this morning are from the Tao Te Ching, which is attributed to the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. It was written sometime around 500 BC. Even then, they were trying to figure out what is leadership. So Lao Tzu said this. He said, the best leaders are those people that people hardly know exist. The next best leader is one who is admired. Next comes the one who is feared. The worst is that leader that is despised. Because if you don't trust the people, they will become untrustworthy. The best leaders value their words and use them sparingly. When she has accomplished her task, the people will say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves. We're so lucky to have Zeno today. So our Time for All Ages story is one of my personal favorites growing up. How many of you remember Madeline? Yeah, everybody does remember it. It's kind of fun to go back and read it as an adult because this is what I first thought of as leadership. I thought that Madeline was a great leader. Yeah, not so much, but let's listen to this story.
Madeline, written and illustrated by Ludwig Bemelmans. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. In 2 straight lines they broke their bread and brushed their teeth and went to bed. They smiled at the good and frowned at the bad, and sometimes they were very sad. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines. In rain or shine. The smallest one was Madeline. She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice. To the tiger in the zoo, Madeline just said, "Pooh, pooh." And nobody knew so well how to frighten Miss Clavel. In the middle of one night, Miss Clavel turned on her light and said, "Something is not right." Little Madeline sat in bed, cried and cried. Her eyes were red. And soon after Dr. Cone came, he rushed out to the phone. And he dialed Danton 106. "Nurse," he said, "it's an appendix." Everybody had to cry. Not a single eye was dry. Madeline was in his arm, in a blanket, safe and warm. In a car with a red light, they drove out into the night. Madeline woke up 2 hours later in a room with flowers. Madeline soon ate and drank. On her bed there was a crank. And a crack on the ceiling had the habit of sometimes looking like a rabbit. Outside were birds, trees, and sky, and so 10 days passed quickly by. One nice morning, Miss Clavel said, "Isn't this a fine day to visit Madeline?" Visitors from 2 to 4 read a sign outside her door. Tiptoeing with solemn face, with some flowers and a vase. In they walked and then said, "Ah!" when they saw the toys and candy and the dollhouse from Papa. But the biggest surprise by far, on her stomach was a scar. "Goodbye," they said, "we'll come again." And the little girls left in the rain. They went home and broke their bread, brushed their teeth, and went to bed. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavel turned on the light and said, "Something is not right." And afraid of a disaster, Miss Clavel ran fast and faster. And she said, "Please, children, do tell me what is troubling you." And all the little girls cried, "Boo-hoo! We want to have our appendix out too." Good night, little girls. Thank the Lord you are well. And now go to sleep, said Miss Clavell. And she turned out the light and closed the door. And that's all there is. There isn't any more.
Oh, I love Madeline. All right, I'd like to invite Karen McGoon-Pearson up here to light our children's chalice. And once she does, we will then sing our children out to their religious education classes, along with the teachers.
We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go, to nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go.
Well, I'm delighted this morning to be sharing the pulpit with my colleague and the former minister of this church, the Reverend Karen Stoyanoff. So without further ado, Karen.
It's my turn.
It's your turn.
Okay. Feels familiar and yet not quite the same. From my earliest memories, I've known that I wouldn't be through with school until I graduated from college. Now, that was a lovely gift that my parents gave to me, since it was an era when even attending college, much less graduating, was not common for females. Of course, by the time I actually got to college and knew that I would not be finished without that graduation, it was much more common for girls. Still, I believe, had I not had the assumption, never even questioned, I might well have been willing to take a leave at least sometime to do other things, like get married or even have babies of my own. The other factor that was important was that I actually loved being in college and looked forward to learning new things. When we talk about leadership, the culture we grow up in has a big impact on what we feel is possible for us, given a number of factors, but certainly the connection to our gender has to what is possible and what is desirable. They will both have a big influence on how we go about being prepared to live the life we want. Note that we are once again in an election year right now. And though females have broken the gender barrier for vice president, we still haven't managed to elect a woman to the job of president. And at least right now, it looks like we aren't going to elect a woman president this year. So, as I have been looking at what my role is in respect to societal leadership, for females, I don't believe that the work is done just yet. So setting that aside, I want to consider what limitations, what invitations, and what assumptions I might be considering for the other forms of leadership that are open to each of us in 2024. Certainly it's open in many ways, and that's not only to take on leadership of our own, but also to support other capable women who wish to be leaders. And I do think it increases as a possibility in our current society with each new day. But I think as I consider my contributions to our society, as well as that of my teenage granddaughter, I need to be aware of the work that still needs to be done to open possibilities for her and make sure that I'm helping out and encouraging her to be courageous in the scope of what she considers. I decided that I wanted to tell you the story of my own pathway to religious leadership as an example of what we each need to consider. When I went off to college way back when, there were really only 3 obvious career paths for females to consider. Although we always had those brave souls who worked on creating new pathways, the 3 career paths that were most accepted as being available to women were, see how many of you can think of it in your head, teaching, nursing, and secretarial. Pretty good. It went out, or pretty bad, depending on how you view that. It was easy for me to choose since blood is a real turnoff for me. And I was truly bored by the work I knew secretaries do. So without needing to ponder the choices, I was able to settle on teaching. And since I loved learning new and more complex things, I wanted to teach older, not younger kids. I loved reading and English, so deciding to prepare to teach English to high school kids was a very logical major for my first college degree. My parents could afford to send me to college at a private college, and since they liked the idea that I was going to a school that could set high standards for the students they accepted, Northwestern was only 90 miles from home and filled the bill beautifully. By the time I finished my bachelor's degree, I already knew that I needed more and immediately enrolled in a master's degree program in the teaching of English. And I think of the 3 career paths open to women, it was teaching that most logically connected to leadership. So I was well on my way to thinking of myself as a leader by that time, although I'm going to want to say more about that in a minute or two. With 2 degrees from a prestigious college, I was able to get a job teaching in a good high school. So the next piece of leadership came along without specific effort on my part. Fortunately, for both me and the kids who got stuck in my classes, I did love teaching, and that enthusiasm probably contributed as much to my success as anything else. And though I did take time out for a few years to produce my own children, I did stay in that career for a good 12+ years. Eventually, though, I found myself dissatisfied. People said, you're just burned out with teaching. But I knew that wasn't the answer. I felt more like I was finished with it. I had done teaching already. I still loved it and knew how important good teachers are. But I had done it. I was finished. Even so, it took me a couple of years to figure out what should come next. I was about to enroll in another graduate school program, this time a PhD. I was exploring life and its possibilities for a while, although I didn't immediately come up with a new career path, even though I really wanted to. I felt incomplete and like somehow or another I was missing the boat. For close to 2 years, I stayed with teaching and tried to identify a new passion to pursue. My husband and I had become Unitarian Universalists. Well, I had. He was a UU from birth. I did feel greatly and happily connected to this faith tradition, and it seemed to me that it invited as deep a consideration as any other way to understand life and the world. And my own parents really had difficulty with this, since they considered that only liberal Christianity had the right answers to life's questions. And one night when we were exploring the ideas of Christianity and UU, I found myself thinking, you could just do what you've always wanted to do. That was my call to ministry. I called myself to ministry, and that may tell another story that's equally important with the one I'm telling this morning. Anyway, in that moment, I knew that I had always been fascinated with religion, and I had a yen to make it part of my life's work. there was that new passion right in front of me. So the next day I started looking into the possibilities that were around me, going to university and getting that PhD in UUism. The rest, I suppose, is history. And fortunately, the percentage of UU ministers that were female was definitely growing rapidly. So it wasn't difficult becoming part of the movement. I didn't initially plan to look for a congregation to lead because I was more interested in social justice work. But by the time I was well ensconced in the program, it was obvious to me that I needed the experience of congregational leadership to be the leader I knew I ultimately wanted to be. So the rest just fell into place. More of that, it was history. And just for the record, I ended up with 4 college degrees, a bachelor's, 2 masters, and a PhD. Even I overkill. For leadership in how to focus my energy and live life meaningfully and well was a great way to organize my influence on the world. I wanted my life to be meaningful and to offer positive opportunities for others to find valuable contributions they could make. From high school and beyond, I wanted to influence life around me. As I studied world religions, I came to believe that there definitely wasn't only one right answer. Meaningful life decisions could be made without limiting choice to only one right answer. And that was true for me, inviting options for how social life was organized and who was recognized as a harbinger of right rules and representative of the right way to face deciding how to invite people to organize their own leadership choices. Anyway, those of us who did this were creating leadership in following religious focus in their lives. One of the most serious problems with leadership in religious beliefs comes from that. If we believe that there is only one right way to understand religion, we will always invite serious dispute among those with whom we might find life meaning. However, I have found that listening openly as someone tells me how they find meaning in life without my prejudging, that not only gives me added insight, but also allows me to find common ground with a much larger group of cohorts. I not only feel more comfortable in terms of understanding life myself, but I also find connection to a much larger cohort of people. When it comes to leadership itself, I find it much more comfortable when I can at least be seen to listen openly to ideas that come from others, instead of just leading a parade for the ideas that I already had before the discussion began. How can I lead a group of people who seriously disagree on what is true if I'm only willing to acknowledge that which I too wholeheartedly agree is true? Now, if that means that I don't disagree or that I never find the ideas accepted by others don't ring true for me, that won't work any better, because of course it's not true. But there is a big difference between being willing to listen and consider something that hasn't previously been part of how I understand the world I live in, or saying, unless it's part of my understanding of what is true, I won't accept it as worthy of my time and consideration. I'm open to your ideas, with the understanding that my own understanding is expanded by my willingness to consider what you believe to be true, and to hope that you will share your thoughts and understanding with me as well. For the bottom line is that there are several good ways to understand our individual belief systems and to explore the differences openly and willingly as we find ourselves exploring the meaning of life. So, Sean, I'm happy to turn this over to you and to learn from the wisdom you are going to share with us all. Thank you, and thank all of you.
Is this a stand-up one? Want to stand up, you can stand up, otherwise you don't need to.
Please stand and body our spirit as we sing this song.
Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love.
I want to start out with a question for you all. With a show of hands, and online I'm looking at you people too on Zoom, how many of you feel comfortable calling yourself a leader? A few people in here, okay. I've noticed a lot of the men tend to raise their hands a lot more than the women do. And yeah, you know, I think it's an interesting thing. What does make a good quality in a leader? How do we feel about leadership? What does that mean? I think that men are often inoculated into leadership more than women are, although I think that's changing, which is a wonderful thing. But, you know, we heard from Karen this morning about some of her call to ministry. And I'll just take a brief moment to mention that I almost didn't answer my call to ministry. I almost did not become a minister because of this guy. If I can, there we go. Yep. So I didn't grow up in a church. So the only frame of reference that I had about what ministry was Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. You talk about your high bars, right? And that was way too high. I mean, like, he's a preacher, he's an activist, he's a writer. I mean, he's just this amazing person who changed the world. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. And this is the problem I think that we have, is that we tend to think of leaders as, you know, someone who's way beyond us in ability. And I think I might need some help with this slide. Maybe we're out of batteries here. So Ginny, if you could, there you go. So we tend to think of these people as leaders, right? They're either CEOs or world leaders or famous activists, even celebrities to certain extents. We think about them being, you know, either very decisive or charismatic or visionary. But actually, interesting enough, there's a lot of different ways to lead. So I want to talk about these different styles of leadership, because I think that's one of the reasons why we hold back from our own sense of leadership. And it was quite an eye-opener for me to realize that there's lots of different ways to lead. So if I could have the next slide. So let's first talk about autocratic leadership, all right? So this is the person who's standing up, maybe on a podium, and is telling people, you know, what to do, right? It's a very hierarchical approach to leadership, but it's the one that most people think of, right? At its unhealthiness, it can turn to authoritarianism, but it's also very valuable, particularly in certain situations, like in an emergency, right? So say a medical emergency happens somewhere here. You don't want me going, so who wants to call 911? You know, you want me to say, okay, you know, you call 911. You know, let's get songs going, you know, whatever it is, right? You want someone who's going to be decisive. It also works really well when you want to have something done very quickly. and without, question, basically. So the military, right? It works well in those types of situations. But obviously it has some problems with it. It can get very micromanaging, controlling. That's where authoritarianism comes. And I think that this is when people think about, oh, leadership, I don't want to be this, right? Particularly women, we're very relational. We don't want to be going, you do this, you do that, you do this, right? Makes us uncomfortable. All right, next slide. All right, transformational leadership. This is the other form of leadership that some of us think about, the charismatic leader, right? The Martin Luther Kings of the world, right? Who just inspire us into this great vision. They have, hopefully at least wonderful principles. If they don't, they're cult leaders, right? But they have this wonderful charisma that makes us all want to be there. One of the challenges with this, so this is actually what I thought of as leadership when I first started. I thought, I have to inspire everybody. Because Madeline, right? Like she was out there in front and she was doing stuff on her own. She wasn't afraid of the tiger at the zoo, poo-poo. She was out there in front being courageous and everything like that. But the reality is I've worked for someone who is this way, who's a charismatic leader, who always had these really innovative ideas and everything. And it was exciting. You were always on the edge and you were doing something different and we were proud of what we were doing, but it was exhausting, right? Like you're constantly changing. Something new is always coming down the pike, right? So again, it can be wonderful and great, particularly if you want to have a vision of where you're going. All right. The third type is democratic leadership. Democratic leadership, that falls right within our fifth principle, right? Democratic means you listen to everybody and you're asking them, give me your input. What do you think about this? It's not the fastest way of doing things, right? You've got to get everybody's buy-in on things, but it's often the most relational and diplomatic. And as I mentioned, it's our fifth principle, but if you want to know of a good example of democratic leadership, look no further than Nancy Lockery, the president of our congregation. She is the prime example of that. And if you were here yesterday when we did our membership gathering workshop, that's exactly Nancy, right? Gather a bunch of people together, brainstorm ideas, have people figure out what they want to do within those ideas. That's democratic leadership right there. And she constantly reminds me, because I come from a generation that's like, just let me do it myself, And so she's always like, no, we need to bring this to the board. We need to bring this to we need to invite people in. And she's always saying, who do we need to invite into this conversation? And I so appreciate that. So the fourth type is called laissez-faire leadership. This is a much more hands-off kind of thing, like, hey, great, you guys are going to be wonderful. I'm going to let you do this over here. There's very low management, but it's encouraging people. It gives people autonomy and authority within the group. And this is great if you've already got really good people within that group who have a sense of vision of where they're going. And I'll give you an example of that, our sanctuary team. I am not involved in that team because we have a dream team. Okay, in the sanctuary team. We've got someone who knows about construction. We have someone who runs the capital campaign. We've got a realtor on there. We've got people who are, have finance background. There are people who understand aesthetics and want things to look beautiful as well. Like, they don't need me there. So I'm like, hey, you guys go. Excellent, good job, well done. So that's I go where the pain is, but not necessarily. So, and then the fifth type of leadership is what's called servant or coaching leadership. And this is one that I think most women feel more comfortable with. And this is really encouraging people. You're not necessarily in the limelight. You're saying, hey, everybody, go for it. Yes, excellent, well done. And I'm going to coach you through that. I'm going to help you through that. And that's where some of my comfort zone is. And I think that a lot of people are this way. They'd rather just lift people up and say, hey, go, you got it. You're wonderful, I'll be there for you, anything else that you need. But now the problem with this is, of course, is that, make sure that people have a vision of where they're going, right? Otherwise, you may not know. And I don't know if this is what Lao Tzu is talking about in terms of when he says people don't even know that you're there. But I will say, how many of you actually know who the board members of this church are? Right? Yeah, Nancy, you don't count. Okay, yeah. Bertie, you don't count. You're on the board. So very few people do. And that's, they're doing good work behind the scenes. Chances are you don't know probably even a quarter of what Nancy does with this church. Or even honestly, you see me up here, this is probably about a third of what I do in the church is put a service together. So, okay, so now the reason why I wanted to tell you all this is that there's all these different ways of being a leader, and there are different places where they're helpful in which to use them. And when I started to learn about leadership myself, and I started being thrust into these roles and managing staff and opening up offices and all sorts of stuff, it felt like less of a big deal when I could break it down this way for me. And I thought, well, okay, I can just put my own personality into this. But I think that people tend to think of leadership as a really big deal, right? That somehow you do have to be the Martin Luther King, you've got to be somebody amazing. And it doesn't really help when you have books, and if you want to change the slide there, like these that come out, that tell you things like dare to lead as if it's something, terrible and horrible. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown and even Heifetz and Linsky, but I like Leadership on the Line, staying alive through the dangers of leading. This is one we were taught this, we read this in seminary, okay? Or I like this one, Managing Narcissists, Blamers, Dramatics, and More. I'm like, my goodness, I wouldn't want to be a leader if that was what I thought leadership had to be. Oh my gosh. So I think that that's one of the challenges that we have. We've got this idea that somehow we either have to be this, thick-skinned person that can take a hammering thing. And maybe if you're a CEO or a politician in the limelight, and I am to a certain extent, you can get some hard stuff thrown at you. But that's what I call big L leadership, okay? And quite frankly, I don't know many people who do that, right? I mean, ministers, we do to some extent. We might do a little bit. We get out there, and sometimes we're in the limelight. But the buck stops, because the buck stops with me or it stops with Nancy. And so we do sometimes have to make difficult decisions. But one of the problems with leadership is we never talk about the fun of leadership. And it really is, there's a joy to leadership about seeing something that you nurtured come to fruition, right? About lifting people up. I mean, do y'all like to say thank you to people? I mean, it's kind of fun, right? Or to say, hey, good job, well done, right? It makes me feel good just as much as this is to hear it. And that's really important for our leaders. Our leaders, one of the things I think, if I have to give a criticism for Unitarian Universalism, and there are many, but one of which is that we tend to be critical of leaders. And that's cool. I mean, don't have a problem with that, and actually you all are incredibly supportive of me, but certainly political leaders we tend to be very critical of out there and everything like that. And it's good to be critical, but it's also really important to say thank you to leaders, right? And for leaders to say thank you as well. I think those are two of the most powerful words that anybody can actually ever use. So this joy of leadership, this everyday type of leadership, of having gratitude for all of the things that we do, of helping one another, we tend to skip by those moments. We don't celebrate them. That's what I call this little L leadership or everyday leadership. It's not about making life-changing decisions or standing before a large group saying, follow me. But if you want to change the slide one more, thank you. So everyday leadership is basically about how we treat people when we have any type of power. How we treat one another depends on any type of power. I'm talking ushers, right? When you're an usher, how do you treat people? Are you saying, you go here? Are you saying, hey, let me bring you over here and invite you to talk to this person here, right? They have power, right? They're the ushers. Jolynn, who's up here, how does she treat you when she's up here in the pulpit? All of these things is definitely the way that is simply how we treat one another when we have any amount of power, whether it's chairing a committee or it's being a parent or teaching or social worker or managing staff, organizing a party, right? Are you treating people like, if you're organizing a bunch of people, are you treating them, authoritarian? Or you're like, hey, what do you think about this? Or getting democratic way of doing things, or just inviting them to say, so what kind of dish would you like to bring? Right? All of these things have to do with leadership. And you don't have to be Martin Luther King Jr. You just have to be kind, supportive, and generous. So everyday leadership, how you treat people when you have types of power, whether that's even power of charisma or authority of some sort. You know, do you order people around? Or you just use your passion to ignite people in what you are passionate about. Like if anybody's experienced Craig as he invites people when he's an usher, he's like so outgoing and friendly. There's Craig, and you know he's passionate about this, and he wants people to share in that passion. Or there are people in here that I know that love to organize parties and put parties on. I know, who could that ever be? You know, and do you like to delegate? You know, all those things. We do these things every day with different people, and that's leadership. All of these different ways of being are about leadership, and we need leaders in this world. Not necessarily people who end up changing the world in some big thing like Gandhi or MLK, but people who are willing to lift up others, right? To help them grow, to say thank you, to celebrate the wins, no matter how small, people willing to take a bit of a risk, like I would say Maureen and Zeno, who kind of were thrust into today's extravaganza leading the music, and it's got to be a little uncomfortable, right? Maureen, I don't think, my 10 years has not led music here, but she stepped up, right? Zeno, who came in, you know, and he's like, you know, he's like, okay, let's try this song. How about we do it this way? You know, it can't be comfortable, but they're learning and they're growing in their own way. And the more that we say thank you to them and lift them up, the more they're going to grow as leaders as well. I'm very grateful for what they're doing. So, you know, our third principle is the encouragement of spiritual growth in our congregations. That's part of it. And leadership is one avenue for that. So I want to encourage you, if you have an opportunity or asked to step up, whether it's here at work, here at the church, or at your work, or in the wider world, ask yourself, what are you called to? Maybe it's actually something that maybe it makes you a little uncomfortable, but think about the joy of what you could actually accomplish if you did. Because I don't think it needs to be something that is scary, but something that we could even consider as a spiritual practice, because that's truly what it is. Leadership stretches us, it helps us grow, and it asks us, what kind of a leader do I want to be, and what kind of leader do I want to have in the world? Because if you are already one, I think you're all already one, even if you aren't comfortable with calling yourself a leader. So let us sing.
From the light. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then the promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then the promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Unitarian Universalist congregations are fully self-supporting, meaning that members and friends raise all the money for the operating budget, ministries, and programs of this church. We are ever grateful for your gifts of time, treasure, and talent. OCUC amplifies that spirit of generosity by sharing half the plate we receive with an organization that shares our values. This month we are partnering with Stand Up for Kids, of course, but I had something up here that I was going to read to you, and now, of course, I cannot find it. So suffice to say, their web page is lovely and full of fascinating information. And what I wanted to share with you are the different ways that they reach out to people, from on the street to people that come in. That there's a lot of, not only do they need fiduciary help, but they also need volunteers. So if you have some time, you might want to talk to them and see in what way you could be of service. There are multiple ways in which you can support the church and this organization. You can mail a check, you can go through our website, or use an app called Vanco Mobile. If you're a roomer, you can simply use the basket as it's passed. The choice is yours. All the information is on our website should you need it. As always, thank you for your generosity.
Just before I play this, I need to do an original piece titled Tuning the Guitar.
I think you plagiarized that.
Yeah.
together a song that puts our intentions into words and expresses our gratitude for the many gifts we share.
To tune again.
We gather together, we gather as one for peace, love, and justice for everyone. We give from our hearts to show that we care. We can change lives with what we share.
Well, now is that time, our weekly ritual, when we honor the important events and people in our lives, which an event we call Joys and Sorrows. And you are invited, one and all, whether you're a member, a friend, a visitor, to do so. And it's about coming forward to light a candle. But to begin, I'd like to invite Don Martin up here. He is our pastoral care, one of our pastoral care team members, and he will assist you in lighting your candles. So if you want to take just a deep breath and think about where you are in your life and what's going on, and if there's something that you hold deeply in the core of your heart, a profound joy or sorrow that you would like to honor, you are invited to do so by coming forward to light a candle. If you're a roomer, you can simply come forward, light your candle. If you'd like to share your joy or sorrow, you can write it on a slip of paper that the ushers have. And if you want to raise your hand, they can give you that slip of paper if you don't have one already. And Zoomers, of course, what you can do is actually write it in the chat here, and I will then read those joys and sorrows out loud. So please come forward, read your joy or sorrow, and then I'll read them out loud. I'll read those online here first. Denny would like you to light a candle for her. Denny M., she says, please light a candle for my friend Irene who passed away this week. I'm sorry, Denny. And Linda C. also asked that we light a candle of joy for her 2-year-old great-granddaughter Landon, who is recovering wonderfully from open heart surgery. 2-year-old. Oh, my goodness, that is a candle of joy. I'm really glad she's okay, Linda. And thank you. Right on. I'm so sorry. Lee Marie S., she would like a candle of joy. She says, I love being able to attend by Zoom when not with you in the room. She says, thank you, Reverend Sean and the whole team who make this possible for Roomers and Zoomers. You betcha. Hey, Lee Marie. So you all can also wave at them over here. This is all of them over there. They're on that camera up there, so I'm also waving. So, and Francie C says, thanks to Maria and Gabrielle for a great auction event last night. Paint and sip. Loads of laughs and fun and creativity as we painted versions of a red cardinal. Cool. Right on. All right. And in fact, Jolene, she lit a candle. I'm doing in the room now. She says the auction, there were so many joys that she has. She says 1 is the auction event painting last night. 2 is hearing Zeno play so beautifully today. And the remember the joy of being in Paris with Joel and Chance while enjoying Madeline. She says, joie de vivre. Yeah. It's a joy of life, absolutely. And then I have a joy here from Mifanwi. She says that she is happy for the message today, how happy I am about the sermon. She says, perfect to talk to about with my students at the Orange County Rescue Mission. Excellent, I'm glad it's helpful. All right, and Anthony, he lit a candle of happiness. He said, for that small moment, the high of all high powers, may we all still have a blessed life for the rest of our vida, our life. Thank you. And Melanie M., she lit a candle of joy for the workshop that was led by Nancy and myself yesterday. She says it was lovely to be heard and able to contribute. See, democracy, democratic leadership, I love it. There you go. And Nancy L., she says she lit a candle of joy for today. The choir is participating in a Martin Luther King Choir Festival in Glendale. She said we'll be at the Forest Lawn Church with other UU churches, choirs from all over Southern California, and this is the first one they've done since the pandemic. So this is very exciting, and so our choir is going to be participating and doing their best to sing beautifully. So, and some sorrows we have here and a joy. Let's see, Lori M. She has a joy, she says, for her son Anthony, who is being so supportive of both his brother and me during this difficult time for our family. It's good to have love surrounding you, definitely. And Alejandro lit a candle of sorrow. So because he says Uno, who is our local female mountain lion, was killed by a car along Santiago Road this week, and pregnant too. Aww. This is being common as they lose their habitat. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you, that is, yeah, really hard. I also want to mention if you could light a candle for Marcia H. She has a joy for her granddaughter Madeline, okay, who is a junior at SDSU. She left yesterday for Madrid in Spain for a 6-month study program in economics at Carlos Tercero University there. She'll turn 21 when she's there. And Marcia says, naturally, our entire family is very proud of her. Yeah. Well, and if you would light also a candle of hope, joy, and sorrow for me for our own Zeno Mueller, who is taking off to move to Switzerland for a while to explore opportunities in classical guitar when he's there. And we wish him all the very best. And when he comes, he has to come visit us and he comes back. So, yeah. So let us hold in love all the joys and celebrations and all the hurts and sadness whether they've been spoken or remain silent in our hearts. Let our joys remind us to be thankful, our concerns remind us to hope, and our sorrows remind us to connect with one another. Let all these moments remind us that we are not alone. Please join Don in a spirit of prayer.
Spirit of life, we pause to give thanks for many gifts of life that are ours, gifts we find expressed and enhanced in the community of this church. We're grateful for our family, friends, and all they mean to us. We're grateful for the insights and beauty we find all around us in the natural world. We're grateful for ministry and for all the forms that it takes in our community of faith, in teaching and preaching, in care for children, and care for our seniors, care for our building, in leadership tasks, both large and small. We're grateful for all who love this community. Amen.
Let us join together to extinguish the flame of our chalice and say together, we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are a congregation made up of people who all believe differently. And yet when we gather together, whether we are in the room or we are on Zoom, we make up one loving community. We need not think alike to love alike. If you're a guest, a visitor, or someone who has not yet been known to us, we invite you to do something. Stand for a brief moment and tell us your name and where you're from. If there are some visitors, we will bring a microphone over to you so that our Zoomers can hear what your name is as well.
This is my friend Coco, and she lives in Huntington Beach. She's
Very nice.
very happy to be here.
Welcome.
We generally don't coerce, but I can't speak for Damon.
Well, since Coco lived through that, my name is Paula, and I'm also from Huntington Beach.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Tim. Rosemary and I are here visiting Orange County, and we for about 6 weeks, and we're from Grand Forks, North Dakota.
All right. If you'd like to know more about our church, including programming for our youth and children, please contact us at hello@ocuc.org. Easier to say, spell than say. We'll help you to get connected. In addition, we invite you to sign up for our weekly email called The Blast at ocuc.org. We offer a tour of our campus for visitors. After the service, if you're interested, you could meet Sean and I right over here. Sean will have a big sign that says, tour. We want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community, but don't worry, because our first stop will be coffee. Second stop will be coffee. It's in there somewhere. We want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community. So reach out, and we will help you get connected.
And speaking of getting connected, you can see there's all these sorts of wonderful things that going on or coming up. We've got sermon discussion groups that are starting, and this is a wonderful way for, particularly if you're newer, you don't have to be newer, but if you're newer and you want to get to know people, because it's kind of hard in a new community to get to know people. So these are groups that get together without me to discuss the sermon for the following week. And they're starting, I believe, this week, which reminds me I have to put together the sermon discussion group. But so they're really a lot of fun. They're a great to get to know people. So I want to encourage you to sign up for them. If you are interested, there is an opening on, there are a few openings left on Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock, and Wednesday evening. I think our other Thursday time is fully booked. So just come and see me and we'll get you signed up after the service. Or you can also contact Wendy, our intern, who's organizing some of that as well. And I'll pass your name on to her and everything. So the other thing is that yesterday at our workshop for membership, I came up with the idea of doing a puzzle swap next weekend. So if you're into jigsaw puzzles, anybody here like jigsaw puzzles? Okay. Bring your jigsaw puzzles, those ones that are still laying around. You're like, what do I do with this? I spent all this money with it. Come bring them. We'll swap out jigsaw puzzles and have a lot of fun doing that. So it's kind of a fun way to pass them around and everything. So it's kind of become a new way for me to relax, is doing jigsaw puzzles. I've got a stack of them and I don't know what to do with them. So this is why we're doing this. Huh?
Where's coffee today?
Oh, and coffee today, by the way, is because we were a little unsure of what the weather was going to be, even though it looks like it's absolutely gorgeous. We're going to be in the room next door here in what we call the admin building. So it's in the foyer. And you can see also then, look at the lovely art by our own Lori M. on the wall. She is a quilting artist. Just absolutely amazing, beautiful work.
And the cardinals are in the Victoria room, the cardinals from last night. The ones that we painted.
Oh, the cardinals that people painted are in the Victoria room from last night, so we can also take a look at that art as well. All right, everybody, this service is over. Let our service continue, but let us sing our benediction.
Let us go out and all do our part. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out, with indifference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out and all do our part. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out, with indifference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy. Woo.
And thank you, Maureen and Zito. This service is over. Let our service continue.